Okay, everybody. Hey, sorry for the delay this morning. We were taking care of an unfortunately urgent issue and I just ran a little bit long. Let me cover for you first what exactly that urgent issue was. We had a property wholesale side, but our wholesale side and our brokerage side are very often connected. So, as licensed agents, you are allowed to um, do wholesale. What has to happen under the brokerage firm is units one, two, three, four, single, double, triple, quad. Those absolutely are guerrilla real estate wholesales. They must be run through the company. Honestly, as an agent of ours, you got to run everything through a company, but we don't charge a lot outside of that. I think we take a few $100s or something, $1,000 because of, as the agent of ours, you're still borrowing our errors and emissions policy. We can still be liable, but you make $500,000 on a commercial wholesale. I'd like you to work with me on it, but whatever. Anyway, we had or have actually actively right now have a we actively have a wholesale agreement on a property shown here, and we signed it September 8th. Signed with the buyer on the 9th or the 10th, and went quickly to title, and title found there was a lis pendus on the property. Lis pendus is pending action. Um, and so that means that someone has filed something in the court saying, hey, a train is coming, there's a problem on this deal. Problem is that there's another buyer who signed a contract with the seller after hours. Not really a problem. I mean, they would have no way to know we existed, vice versa, other than you can't sell the same property twice. So the seller has an issue. So we've gone and sent letters like this, and we were just doing due diligence because the buyer on the transaction hasn't responded. The seller on the transaction doesn't know what to do. She claims she was scared or something. How soon can you close? How soon can you close? And basically, at this point, we wanted to inform MPL Law, which is handling the title apparently for the other buyer, as well as a couple other people named on this original contract and this original group email. Hey, there's a problem here. We wanted to defend our position, and we wanted to defend our position without having to file in court and spend a few $100s and drive down to Williamstown, wherever the hell Williamstown is, and whatever. So once a listing agreement is signed, it's inviolate. Now, let me take you through that a little bit more in detail. So, and we'll switch back right now to if I could log into, I've been having login issues, but if I can log into my zip forms, we'll switch back to the forms themselves. And this is really what I wanted to cover today anyway. So when you're in your zip forms, this is if you're a Flex MLS member, you're in Flex, and you're doing a transaction through the MLS. And I'm just going to open up a generic property here and just kind of look at some generic documents that are critical. Now I have templates set up, and you'll see templates up here for different property types, for different situation types. So under your templates, you have generic listing, generic commercial listing, buyer template, standard listing. And the beautiful thing about the templates is you can have all of your information already filled in, already populated. That was a weird thing for it to do. You already populated your name, your brokerage firm, your blah, 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 all that alphabet soup is already done. So templates are great. Like with most everything else, you're better at it than I am. I am better at teaching something than I am necessarily at always doing it properly. But we will take you through some basic contracts today, just so we have a general idea. And I'm going to also open up, I'm going to show you our net listing agreement, which is different. Shockingly enough, it's a different agreement. That's why I call it different. So net listing is not the typical way we do things. Typically, you're doing a listing contract, which is a commission-based, start date, end date, commission-based in the contract. And we won't go through in detail any of these contracts today, but generally you're putting us, brokerage firm, licensee, seller, address. So this is the seller's personal information. This is the address of the property, and so on and so forth. Identifying information, start and end date, and commission. Now you'll notice this one and $315. We charge $315 extra unless the seller balks at it. Normally they don't give a crap. That's our transaction coordination fee. And bluntly, I pay the transaction coordinator $300, so that's $15. I will cover TCs in a different video. If you're going to go less than 5%, $4,000 commission, talk to me about it. Now, if your seller does not want to pay the buyer's agent, it's half that, 2.5, and 2. But we try to talk them into that. And this is not a net listing agreement. This is a standard agreement. We don't do non-refundable typically. We get paid 270 days after the ending date. So if the contract ends on January 1st and within 270 days of without a sale, and within 270 days of an ending date, no sale occurs, if by the end of our contract, no sale has occurred and the contract simply expires and ends and it's over, but within 270 days from there, one of the people who saw it during the time it was listed buys it, we still get paid. Procuring cause is the reason. We were the procuring cause. They saw it during the time it was listed. The reason for this is this prevents the buyer from, hypothetically, or the buyer's agent from handing a business card to the seller and saying, hey, as soon as your contract expires, call me. That's what it's intended to prevent. Here's where we're telling what compensation the seller has agreed to pay the buyer. Now, if we're going to be real sticklers about this, you'll see the word up here is offered. Okay, that means that the seller has agreed to give us 5%. The seller will pay broker 5%. We will offer buyer agent 2.5%. Now, should the buyer agent not take the 2.5%, we're legally allowed to keep the whole 5%. Sellers agreed to pay 5% and agreed to let us offer 2.5%. Buyer's agent doesn't take the 2.5%, then it's legally more money. I don't find that terribly ethical, and I wouldn't really see that happening because most buyer's agents want it, but whatever. What seller concessions they're willing to offer, duties of buyer and broker. We will walk through this in detail when you have a listing. But the other one is down here in deposit money. If they don't want it on the MLS, they don't want it on the internet, they have to tell us that. I don't know why they hired us if that's what they want. Fixtures and personal property. This is an important one. Fixtures or anything attached to the property. If it has a screw in it, has a nail in it, glue, whatever, it's a fixture. You want to be clear here. You also want to be clear with your seller. You want to fill in as many of these blanks as you can. You also want to be clear with your seller, that Tiffany chandelier in your front bedroom is part of the property unless you specifically exclude it, and you make sure it's excluded in any buyer's contract. When you get the offer from the buyer, you have to read that over and make sure you're protecting the things your seller wanted protected. Also in here is broom clean. It's assumed the seller will empty the house to literally the fixtures. If it ain't bolted down, don't fix it. What kind of money will they accept? And I see someone just beeped in here. Hey, buddy, I'm a little bit. How's everything going?
Everything's good. Just
All right. So I'm just going to keep going with what I'm at because I'm not sure who's out there in YouTube land. So I'll be back. Just keep watching. I'll be back in a second.
okay.
All right. So just going over the contracts, additional terms. If we, it's 5%. Now this is my additional terms. This is my personal way that I do it. I don't have to. I'm charging 5% if there are two brokerage firms involved. 4.5% if two Gorilla agents have the deal, meaning I have one side, Nair has the other. I have buyer, you have seller, whatever. And 4% if I'm both buyer and seller. I don't have to do that. I do that with my repeat clients, my repeat customers, simply because I feel it's the reasonable thing to do. And actually, I just remembered that I wanted to. I keep forgetting to send something, so I'm just going to send it right now. So I'm just going to copy this, add Anthony. Add Stephanie. Okay, sorry. I keep forgetting to. And it was one of my repeat clients. That's what made me remember this. Now, in the listing agreement, also there is a section, and I'm not going to find it, of course, right now because that would be too convenient. That says if the deal ends without a sale in here, how much does the broker get? And normally I include 25% of this. And actually, they may have taken that out of this contract. But we want to always have somewhere in here, and it can be very well put down here as well. This additional section is a great place to put it. You want to have something that says if deal closes without, I won't even write it. If deal closes without going to settlement and seller keeps deposit, we want to keep 25% of the deposit. It sounds petty. I never agreed with it early on in my career. But some deals you have so much blood, sweat, and tears in. This does not happen that often that the seller keeps the deposit. This is a fractionally tiny percentage of the deal, like one in my entire career. But I was 200 hours into that transaction at that point. And that, was a $20,000 commission or deposit he agreed to take to confiscate 10 of it. So that was $2,500. So at least I could say, okay, I made something on my time. Because there are some deals that you're in. Now, it's a typical residential deal. You're not into it for that much. Okay, fine. You're not into it that much. Move on. But anyway, this is what is a normal transaction listing agreement. This is a net listing agreement, which you'll notice is not a PAR document, although you can use PAR net listing. I just don't. And what separates, and this is what I use instead of a wholesale contract. You'll see it says not 1173 because we don't use the 1173 wholesale contract anymore. The reason we moved away from this is because of the new law 1173. The seller can walk away from the transaction at any time for any reason within 30 days. Where since most wholesales close within 30 days, they're slamming the door basically on wholesales being enforceable. And we had two wholesales back to back where we had a buyer, we were in closing, somebody spent money on the deal, it was already ready to go. somewhere in title. The seller just, for whatever reason, did not follow through. Refused to. I will not sign. We had two of them back to back. One of them was the seller woke up and realized that if he sold, he had nowhere to live. I'm not sure how that didn't occur to him beforehand. And he didn't have the money or the credit to move on. So again, how did that not occur to you beforehand? But okay. And the other one where the seller, who we knew the seller was working with his mom, and that his mom was the seller. But his mom was supposedly not willing to have a conversation. Whatever, was not. Supposedly, the son had brought everything to the mother digitally and had her sign it digitally. Then comes up and says, "No, you know what? My mom actually never signed the document. I signed it, her name to it, and now she refuses to cooperate." And fraud, whatever. Okay, yes, not fraud by us. We did what we were instructed to do, although we now make sure we speak to the subject principal owner directly. He claimed his mom was nonverbal, but if his mom's nonverbal, how did she refuse to do anything else? So this is the reason we make sure we speak to everyone. But in any case, leaving within 30 days. He agreed to pay us back for the title expenses, but we all know that's never going to happen. So with those two transactions, which happened both couple months ago, and both like within weeks of each other. Unfortunately, both with the same buyer, so it's even worse. But we now, number one, we speak to every seller directly, even if it's son or whoever's handling it for them. And number two is we use this, not 1173. The difference is this is a brokerage agreement. Okay, they are accepting a sales net price. So they're saying $50,000. Anything above $50,000, we get to keep, and that's down here in the broker profit. This is not right. So this is how we use our wholesale contract, and pretty much any contract. Now this allows us also to list it on the MLS. We can do whatever the living flip we want to with it. So we have marketing authority down here. Do anything we want with it. Remains in effect till closing. So these are a couple of the more basic agreements that you would be looking at doing. With every single, honestly, every single conversation with what the state calls substantive conversation, you need to have a consumer notice. Now, technically, when you pick up the phone with someone or you're on chat with someone, text, whatever the methodology be, there's a verbal consumer notice, which is on the back of my business card, that takes you through all the crap you're supposed to tell them about we're an agent, whatever. I don't do that. I do, however, say, listen, just so you know, I'm legally required to identify that I'm a licensed broker with my own agency, and why as an agent, and it's not, whatever. We're not acting as your agents yet, but we're required to let you know that. That way, we've done something. Most agents don't even freaking bother. Consumer notice. It's supposed to happen on the first conversation. And it's informational. It's not a contract. It's informational. Then you want to also have the other documents, depending on your situation, that we can walk through on a specific deal. And this is sort of the 101 for being a broker. And now I know you're not licensed yet, but just so you know, like Tuesdays, you're welcome to come because you are getting licensed. Tuesdays are licensing. Thursdays are off market. Wednesdays are kind of free for all deal analysis. And everything's free for all. But so the other thing that the law requires for your new beginning agents, first of all, those of you who are lining up to a renewal, which is all of you, because May 31st of even numbered years is renewal time. If you don't renew your license by May 31st, you don't renew of the even numbered years. It sucks every 2 years. Fine, deal with it. It especially sucks if you just got your license. You're like, wait, I've only been licensed for 6 months and now I'm renewing. Yeah, it sucks. Deal with it. There is something about if you the same year as the renewal, like if you pull your license in January something something. I think there might be something there. At least there used to be. But May 31st of every even number year. If it's your first renewal, for most of us, for everyone, there's a set amount of continuing ed, both for the state license as well as for your PAR, your Association of Realtors. And PAR, by the way, is every year. But for the state, if your first year, your newbie, your first renewal, there's a specific package of training courses. So when we line up, we'll get more into that, but just whatever. You're required to have, technically on everything, like it's supposed to be on your home voicemail. Let's all be honest, that never freaking happens. But on everything you put out there, there should be your name, Gorilla Real Estate, your name, your phone number, technically your name, your phone number, your license, our name, our address, our license, our phone number, not license, phone number. The general idea, what they're really trying to get at is if they can't reach you or they're pissed at you or whatever, they should be able to find your broker with ease. This is your header on your Facebook business page, probably technically your header on your Facebook personal page, but anywhere that, Instagram, da, 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 da. I recommend everyone, and here this does apply to you and all the wholesale people, is have a Facebook business profile that is separate from your personal life, and do everything through that. Have a phone number separate from your personal number, Google Voice, whatever. Do everything through that. And on those, you're saying, but Gorilla Real Estate, phone number, whatever, or not here, since you're not licensed yet, you're not with Gorilla, you hunting for homes, yada, yada, yada. So that everyone knows you're with a legitimate organization. The licensing board can't come after you. And I've been told by reasonable authorities they won't come after you unless for this is not a prima facie, they can, but they don't. This is not a prima facie, oh, gee, you didn't have this on your website, therefore we're going to nail you to the wall. No. However, if you're caught on something else, they'll just throw this on for extra fodder. So it's like, why not? I mean, is it possible? Is it possible to have media? Sure. Is it reasonable? No. But if you're making a reasonable effort, everything in real estate comes down to reasonable effort. So you want to have your name, your contact info, whatever that might be, our name, our phone number. Gorilla Real Estate, Steve Franco Broker, but whatever. Phone number, fine. 757-798-7051. So that covers the basic documents, consumer notice. Oh, yeah. The other one that's important, and honestly, is what I ignored for years, I never did this, is when you're representing a buyer. So when you talk to a seller, hey, great, we're going to come out here, and you come out. And by the way, if they don't sign the consumer notice, you can't force them to sign. Okay, but if they don't sign the consumer notice, if you're doing it digitally, great. You have the send, you print out the sent one to prove that you've sent it, and you store it in our records department, which I'll show you in 1 second, our paperless pipeline. Or they sign it and it goes paperless pipeline. Everything goes to paperless pipeline. And I'll show you that more in depth on a different show. But that, for right now, email to GPGH Realty, Good People, Good Homes Realty, gpghrealty@gmail.com. So you always want a consumer notice on everyone you speak to at any substantive level, or at least have sent it to them. Get their email, send it to them. If they don't sign it, great, print it out, the proof with the little thing that DocuSign gives you to prove you sent it, or an email proof that you sent it or whatever. If they don't sign it, you can't force them to sign, but you have it, and it's in our files. So, well, you met with Jane Smith, but state comes and does an investigation. You met with Jane Smith, but you never filed a consumer notice. Well, yeah, I did. Here it is. You're responsible for maintaining records, so are we. We both are. When talking to a buyer, before you go to the property, NAR requires that you have a buyer agency contract. Truthfully, this is a dumb idea not to, be perfectly honest with you. With a buyer, you want to make sure of, and this also applies to you off-market folks, with a buyer, before we get too serious, before they go see a property, hey, give me some idea you get the money, basically. Proof of funds, bank account, line of credit, something pre-approval from a bank within the last 30 days. Those expire, so I like them within the last 30 days. Something that says, no offense, but they're worth your time. No reason to waste the seller's excitement over taking someone to a house and then someone can't buy the house because they're not qualified. No reason to waste your time or put the property at risk by giving out a code. Listed properties, MLS properties, do not give out codes. Off-market properties, you can. Talk to me, I'll give you the rules on that. But they don't get to go to the property if they haven't proven the money. You don't meet them at a property if they haven't proven they have the money. It's just a waste of everyone's time. And that's exactly how I explain it to them. Why go shopping if you don't have a wallet on you? What are you accomplishing? You get this signed buyer agency contract. Again, all of your stuff is filled in here. Start date, end date. Everything must be 365 days or less. And what are you getting compensated? Now you'll notice this is 3% or a number, which I usually will put in a number if necessary, and $350. Now what I do, and apparently this is not a universal, is if they promise to pay me 3% and the seller is putting up 2.5%, they only have to pay me 0.5%. And sometimes I even waive that. Apparently there are agents out there that are like, oh, buyer's going to pay me 3%. Seller's going to give me 2.5%. I'm going to make 5.5%. Legal? Probably. Ethical? I don't think so. I mean, that's kind of the reason the seller is given the money is to make it easier on the buyer. But whatever. The point is, you want one of these before you go show a property. And they come in two flavors. They come in exclusive and non-exclusive. And in the non-exclusive version, the line here will say something like, for the property named whatever. And even on the exclusive version, I will say, I'll always put in here, for the property, blah, 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 and all other properties discussed with or shown by or shared by agent. So even on the non-exclusive one, it says if I sent you a property, I have a right to claim that. According to NAR, no, you don't. So it's not in this case, you do. This is an exclusive. So use this whenever they're willing to do an exclusive. But on a non-exclusive, there's a different buyer agency contract for each property. And actually, according to NAR, even here, there's a different buyer agency contract for each property. But definitely on the non-exclusive. But even on the non-exclusive, I say any property shared with or discussed with, so that, they call me about something else, I'm talking about something else, and then they can't go to a different agent. The whole purpose of this, and I've never had to pull this one, is I work with I work with a seller, I work with, or I'm working with a buyer, yada, yada, yada. I say, hey, 123 Main Street down here looks good for you. No, okay, cool, fine. And then he goes ahead, I find out later through some unrelated process that he went ahead and bought 123 Main Street, but he went directly to the seller's agent, or he went to somebody else. Say, wait a second, well, that's funny. Here's your signed buyer agency contract on 123 Main Street. Signed before you went ahead and did the other deal. Somebody owes me money. You owe me money. See, down here it says, this is what you owe me. But you didn't do any work on the deal. I said, yeah, but see up here it says, this is the address, or any property shared with you. Winnable, who knows, but you do that here. So you always want to, by NAR rules, get one of these before you go out to a property, exclusive or non-exclusive. And just all right, so that's all for the brokerage training stuff. The one other very important one, really what brought me to it, is standard agreement of sale. This is the buying agreement. This is the purchasing agreement. And there are commercial versions, there are Spanish versions. I'm going very quickly here. When you have a situation, I will walk you through it much more specifically. But buyer, seller, address, one agency, another agency, fine. Within here, It talks about all the similar stuff. It talks about buyer broker fee. How much is the seller paying the buyer? Settlement possession. Talked about all sorts of dates. But the important one is the processes of termination depending on a certain thing. Specifically, how not to end up in what we're ending up in Williamstown, which is two buyers on the same property. Okay. You as the listing agent are responsible, assuming they don't go around you in some way like they did in Williamstown, for making sure there's not two buyers on a certain property. One time when I was a Cub reporter, just put it, had a $2.5 million portfolio. Bunch of different buildings, whatever, a bunch of stuff. The seller and buyer talked. There was inspections done. Seller came back and said, I want seller, or a buyer came back and said, I want seller to take these two properties off. We don't want them at all. And we want to pay this for the remaining properties, and we want the seller to make these repairs. And the seller pretty much flatly said, no. And I did not read the contract carefully enough. And it almost became an enormous problem. In the inspection section, it describes what happens if inspections are, required and things are not up to snuff. That's in here. Well, I thought when the buyer and seller mutually agreed that this ain't happening, that the property goes back on the market and goes on, because I didn't read this carefully enough. Lo and behold, instantly I find another buyer. I've now got what I thought it was dead and over with. First buyer didn't want it, whatever, and I thought it naturally expired. It does not. Nothing naturally expires. There's always a piece of paper for everything. You want to change a price, there's a piece of paper. You want to terminate, there's a piece of paper. Everything is pieces of paper. Nothing is free. So I ended up with a new buyer buying the whole thing, perfectly willing to take it, nothing wrong with it. Okay, we'll take it. I had the old buyer who then woke up and said, oh no, I want the deal. And here's my lawyer who's pissed that you're doing something else. And I went to the old buyer and I said, oh, so you're taking the whole thing at its full price? It's like, no, I want these changes. I said, well, the seller's already told you no. And they went ahead and hired a lawyer to try to force the seller to change the contract, meaning force the seller to remove those properties, force the seller to do what the buyer requested. There's no way of that happening. But that wasn't what saved me. What saved me was the first buyer's contract settlement date. Way up at the tipping top of the contract. Passed. April 15th, they were still fighting it. This is not the actual date, but whatever. April 16th, they had missed their date by which to settle. Because down in the inspection section, and this is what I missed in not having read the contract, it said, if buyer and seller do not reach a mutually acceptable agreement and buyer does not terminate this agreement by written notice, buyer will accept the property and agree to release the paragraph of 28. Which means when buyer, and the problem was I represented everybody, so this all comes back to you as the agent. When buyer didn't terminate the agreement because they couldn't reach an agreement, buyer was legally required to complete the purchase, which they were refusing to do. Technically means seller could have kept the deposit, and there could have been lawsuits galore to go play with. So all I'm saying in all of this is your contract is what matters. And back to the thing which I was late for the call for, this sale where there are two, us and the buyer we represent is A, and another buyer was B on a totally unrelated to us on a property we have under wholesale. There's two buyers on the same property. Therein lies the lawsuit. Therein lies the problem. Therein lies everyone calculating their damages. There's Ours happened to be first, okay, which makes it. And Ryan and I have discussed. He's like, "Well, that makes it better." Well, does it make it better? Yeah, I guess it means we didn't screw up and step on somebody else's toes. But there's no way the other buyer knew this was that we even existed. The seller screwed up. So it makes us better, but it doesn't make us win. So, I can't think of an analogy, but basically that's kind of what I mean. So anyway, so that is your documents matter. What it says in paper, and this is why rule number one in real estate is verbal doesn't mean squat. We have another transaction going on where the sellers signed a listing contract and net listing with us, and now they're being jerks and not responding. And we already have a contract signed with the buyer. We had 4 weeks to find a buyer. We found one 3 days before the end of the 4 weeks. But before the end of the 4 weeks is the important part. The sellers are now getting non-responsive, so we get to sue them and try to collect our commission or whatever. So the point is, what it says on paper matters. It doesn't matter that. So in this other deal, the seller signed a paper saying, "I want to sell at 40,000 net listing. We earn everything over 40,000." And these, I'm bringing up bad examples. These don't happen that often, but seller says they signed a contract at 40, and then they told us they wanted 50, and we found a buyer at 55. Legally, we could prosecute from 40 up. We could say this is the document that was signed, but that's not ethical. I'm not even sure it's legal because they did tell us they wanted to be over 50. So we just want the number over 50. What they're verbally saying we want 50 and they signed at 40 isn't going to change us, isn't going to move the needle. There might be an ethics complaint if we do otherwise, but there's really no legal complaint. But the point is, when someone says you have the right to advertise my property verbally, without a contract signed, that means nothing. Someone says, anything else verbally, it doesn't matter. Nothing in real estate matters until it's in writing. Even what's called a pocket listing, which means the agent knows the buyers that the seller is willing to sell. In the residential world, it's pretty much black letter, not going to do it. In the commercial world, it's a little more gray. But realistically, I tell everybody, unless I have a piece of paper signed, I can't represent you. I can't help you find a buyer for 2 reasons. One is, I don't know that it's legal because you only verbally told me, and I haven't proven that you're the owner. 2 is, why would I? Because a listing agreement, an agreement to sell, an agreement to market, a net listing, regular listing, wholesale agreement, whatever, comes with this explanation of how I get paid. If you just tell me, hey, bring me a buyer and we'll work something out. Does work something out means you give me a handshake for bringing you $1 million buyer? Nothing is verbal in real estate. So anyway, that's all I got. Nair, have you got anything that you wanted to cover today?
Can you hear me? I'm trying.
Yeah.
No, not really. I was just tuning in and listening.
Okay.
Making sure everything I already know is still locked in and engraved into my mental. Yeah. Is the what was the other one? The other one you said is tomorrow or Thursday. The other training, right?
Well, I mean, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 11:30, we're always here.
Okay, got you. Yep.
So 3 days a week at 11:30, we're here, and actually, my VA is starting to organize. What do you call it? She's starting to organize the YouTube channel so that brokers training is here and yada yada yada. So we're back tomorrow. And then on the one last thing, and this is for everybody, is as either agent, but especially the agent of the listing side or the one that has the seller. And by the way, for those of you in the licensing world, listing agent and seller agent are the same. Selling agent and buyer agent are the same. it's a stupid terminology thing, but the selling agent is the one that brings the buyer. So I always say seller agent and buyer agent, or listing agent and buyer agent. I don't the selling agent confuses me. So just when someone says selling agent, they don't mean the seller agent. But anyway, most communities have some sort of, or many have some sort of inspection before sale. In Wilkes-Barre, it's simple. Someone goes down to the city hall, you pay $90 a unit. Somebody comes out, they look around the building, they do the little safety inspection, write a piece of paper, and you can close. In Ohio, they have a similar, this deal that we're doing out there with Nair. We are all, the city is much more, their document needs to be notarized. It's like 12 different documents, and it's just a long pile of, and we're just waiting for the buyer to notarize so we can get that process on the train. So anyway, that's pretty much what we got there. So I guess I'll see everybody who wants to tomorrow. Tomorrow's kind of a deal analysis, open mic night, which they always are. If you've got a specific deal going on, let us know. And all right, cool. I guess that's it then.
All right.
All right, thank you. Bye. Talk to you soon.
Bye.